Okay, welcome on this Sunday evening, Sunday 23rd of August 2020, for this webinar. Really, it's about the goldmine opportunity that exists, repurposing defunct commercial properties into alternative uses. Now, there are very, very rare times like these where so many circumstances just come together and create a massive opportunity. And I mean, normally I kind of get on with it, but this time around I'm kind of sharing with people what I'm seeing in our own property business and what we're doing over the next few years to capitalize on what is a unique opportunity in property. So let's just get going then. Repurposing commercial properties into residential use, and also repurposing commercial properties into other commercial uses. We're going to look at why now a whole bunch of things are coming together to make this the right time and the right place to get started, and why the next few years might be an unmissable opportunity that will never be repeated, quite frankly, and why the first mover advantage people, the people that take action now, will be ahead of the game and have some fun before, quite frankly, it's too late. So I'll lay that all out for you during the course of this this talk. Okay, commercial property. I've been investing in property since 1990. I bought my first commercial property in 2001. I enjoy commercial property simply because you deal with a different type of tenant than your typical sort of residential let or HMO. I still do residential property. About 70% of my rent roll comes from residential property. About 30% comes from commercial property. I think the big thing with commercial property, it's scalable. And it doesn't need boots on the ground. It's far less management effort to run a portfolio of residential properties. And that's what I found over the years. And what I found is that a lot of people get into property for financial freedom, but it's commercial property that gives you time freedom and also location freedom, because it's far more scalable as a business. So we're going to talk mainly in this session about repurposing commercial properties into residential use, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the opportunities repurposing commercial properties into commercial uses as well, for keeping as commercial properties. We'll talk a little bit about them both, but both are important to focus on as part of your property game. For those who don't know me, a little bit about me and where I kind of, my background, if you like. As I said, I started investing in property back in 1990. So I've been doing this now for some 30 years. I graduated with a degree in computer science, and I spent 10 years in management consultancy, did an MBA in the middle, worked for the likes of Accenture and some of the leading management consulting firms in the world. All the way through that management consulting career, I was building up a portfolio of buy-to-let properties. When I quit work, I quit my day job back in 2001 and went full-time. With the increased time that I had available, I basically did a lot more property development. Our bag has always been converting buildings into multiple flats and renting them out, basically, keeping them for long-term rental. It works very well because when you have all your lettable units under one rooftop, you get a considerable economies of scale from managing those rental units. So that's been sort of very, very attractive. Now, my areas where I operated were typically London. Areas like Camden, Kentish Town, Archway, Tufnell Park, Finsbury Park, all these sort of North London end postcodes were the areas where we had a lot of fun. Now, in the noughties, as in the beginning of this century, what began to happen was that London became very hard to do from a yield perspective. The yields just didn't make sense. And it was at this time that I started latching on to commercial properties and converting those properties into residential use. What I found was that when you bought a shop with upper parts, if you converted some of the space above into residential use, what you do is you get a higher, greater quality of yield in London. So whereas I was only managing 5-6%, 7% if I was doing sort of pure residential property, I found by doing commercial and mixed use properties and converting space above shops into residential use, I was suddenly getting 12, 13% plus yields. So that was one of the reasons I got into commercial conversions. Now, I did my first commercial to residential conversion. It was a back of a shop into residential use. I did my first commercial to residential conversion back in 2006. So that was before it became PD. Back then, we did these all under planning permission and went through the planning process to get these things done. Then in 2013, it became a lot easier when these things all became PD. So converting commercial buildings to residential use has very much been my bag, and it's something that I've been doing since 2006. And the ones that, and the units that we have been doing have been converted into residential use, mainly for keeping as part of our own portfolio. And as I said, that's mainly been in the London area. You may have seen me on telly. We've just filmed the series 2 of Property Elevator, which is a pitch type show, which is appearing on Sky this autumn. We're also going to be releasing it on our YouTube channel. It's basically like Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, where people pitch their property projects to us 5 angels, and we fund them. I found in this series, you'll see coming up, I've funded a couple of deals, including a little office to residential conversion project, which is all exciting stuff. One of the other things I do is that I'm a judge on the National Property Investor Awards, which takes place every year and aims to reward excellence in property investing and developing. I've been on the judging panel since the awards started, which really is a lot of fun because it gives you exposure to some of the cutting edge ways people are creating opportunity in the property market, no matter what the property market is throwing at you. So I do residential, commercial properties. We also have a serviced office business. We've just launched a serviced office centre in St Albans. It's basically flexible co-working and office suites, flexible office space. We have about 45 office suites in our St Albans Business Centre. And that's actually, after COVID, that's actually doing very well. St Albans is, of course, a massive commuter town into London, and very few people, whereas the office market is suffering in central London, it's actually picking up with people wanting to rent flexible spaces near to where they live without having the need to commute. So that's another kind of thing that we do. So our business is primarily property, commercial to residential conversions. You can get hold of me on all these sort of platforms, social media platforms. Many of you will be subscribers to my YouTube channel. We're up to 24,000 people on YouTube. If you're not a subscriber, do subscribe now and hit the bell icon. We put out new content every week, and we're putting out a lot of commercial property content, and we'll be putting out a lot more case studies actually as we get into the autumn. So if you want to find some real information of what's happening right now in property, make sure you pick up that content that comes through on YouTube. Just to repeat, commercial conversions is what we're going to talk about tonight. This was the planning permission for my first ever commercial conversion, which was a retail to residential unit, which was won back in 2006. I say won because this was won the hard way 7 years before it became permitted development. It was won through going through the planning process with all the red tape that entails. So we've been doing commercial conversions since then. Now, I mentioned that we have a commercial property portfolio, and in all the commercial properties that we have bought over the last few years, one of the things we always look for is alternative use potential. I don't buy any commercial property, even if it's got a great tenant in there, unless that property can be repurposed to some other use. Now, the reason why I'm so excited about these conversion opportunities and repurposing opportunities is that over the last 6 weeks or so, we've been taking an extensive look at our commercial property portfolio. We've identified more than 15,000 square foot of space that we can either repurpose or add using existing permitted development rights and or the new ones that are coming in over the coming months. So this is an opportunity which kind of we're doing not just for our own portfolio, but also to identify acquisitions as well. If you've got commercial property, it makes sense to look over your portfolio with a fine-tooth comb because you already own the land. If you can add an extra floor or repurpose a site to some other more profitable use, which makes you more cash flow, that's the place to look at ahead of doing a sort of further acquisition. So really reviewing these commercial PD opportunities has been something of primary interest to us in our commercial property business. So what am I going to talk about tonight? I'm going to talk about really why over the next few years is a window of opportunity. It's a window of opportunity that will pass. Now, we've got PD rights, which are going to disappear. They're going to disappear on the 31st of July 2021. So you're going to want to get in there and implement those PD rights right now. We've got new PD rights coming in, and you're going to want to get in there and take first mover advantage when relatively few people kind of understand what's going on. And you've got this economic situation right now, which makes easy pickings for finding some of these commercial property sites. And I'll go into a little bit about that later on as well. So the commercial property, there's a window of opportunity. The next 3 or 4 years is going to be the time when you are going to, I don't think you'll be able to repeat the opportunity that will be before you in the next few years, actually over the next decade. And I'm going to set out exactly why that's the case. I'm going to talk a little bit about why commercial as opposed to residential. I'm going to talk about my 2 guiding principles, because our commercial portfolio has survived exceptionally well during this COVID-19 crisis. And I'm going to share with you why. It's my 2 guiding principles that underline any commercial acquisition that we make. And I'll share those with you. And I'll also pepper in a whole bunch of case studies, some existing PD rights and some of the new PD rights that you can use and how you can apply these to sites that you see. So that's all coming up. But first, let's just look a little bit at the opportunity. Why so many things are coming together to create such a perfect opportunity for commercial property right now. The first thing is the recession. We're in a recession. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But what I wanted to do was put the recession into some form of perspective. Now, in the 1930s, the Great Depression of the 1930s, there was 8% fall in GDP. 1991, 92, when I started investing in property, there was a 2 to 3% fall in GDP. In 2009, when the Lehman's crash happened and the credit crunch happened, we saw a 6% fall in GDP. This quarter alone, it's been a whopping 20%. So it's been massive. It's been absolutely massive. But we're not really seeing the effects of it right now, because this time the government has really put in a massive parachute, if you like, to stop the economy crash landing and just disintegrating, quite frankly. And that's been through bounce back loans, support, VAT deferment, grants, C-bills, all sorts of measures to help. Now, furlough schemes, of course. Now, that is only going to last so long. That's only going to last so long. And then when that sort of comes off, which really will start to happen at the end of this year, you will see the effects of recession really start to take hold. Now, there's something that happens in a recession, and the effects of the recession will take hold next year, once this artificial high starts to wear off. The artificial high has been caused by all the money that the government has kind of put into the economy. Now, businesses are going to fail. Businesses are going to find it difficult. And whenever there's a recession, what you find is people take a whole look at this commercial space that they've got. They rationalize, they reduce, they cut back. And obviously some businesses fail. So we're going to see more commercial properties become available, but supply and demand is going to be in balance, meaning that there are going to be more commercial properties available for the number of buyers that want to take up those sort of space. And what happens in a recession is that commercial values always fall more than residential values. And that's a very, very important thing to consider and understand. So residential values, may fall a little bit, depending on the property type and the location and the supply-demand characteristics in that location. Because of course, there's no such thing as a property market as such. It's a micro market in regionally and per property type all over the UK. But commercial property, always in a recession, suffers a massive fall. Now that puts pressure on commercial rents, and of course commercial properties are valued based on the rent roll that they enjoy, and therefore if there's less demand for them and the rents are challenged, therefore the commercial properties start to fall a little bit in value because of supply demand, and also because of obviously the recession. So there's a mega whammy on its way. Now, the government have done all this quantitative easing again. Those of you may remember in 2009 with the Lehman's crash, we saw £300 billion pumped into the UK economy. What happens when you print money? When I heard about quantitative easing back in 2009, I was terrified, because what that means is if you've got a pound in the bank, it's going to be worth less in a few years' time. Not immediately. It takes a little bit of time for the inflationary effects of quantitative easing to take effect. This is what happened last time. There is no inflationary effect during the recession because the job situation, the unemployment situation puts a dampener on inflation. But what happens is when the employment market picks up and the economy starts to pick up, what you see is the effect of all that money that's been pumped into the economy through what I call crack economics. That leads to inflation, and in particular, inflation of asset prices. Now, during the crash of the credit crunch of 2009, we had 3 or 4 years of recession where there were some great easy pickings in commercial property. I bought some commercial property, which I bought at, I was buying commercial property for under what the previous occupiers actually paid for them. And that was because of those unique recessionary sort of circumstances. Then you add value. You add value through commercial conversions and commercial repurposing, and then you wait. You only had to wait for a few years until about 2013, 2014, as the economy started to recover and pick up. What happened was the inflationary effects of all that quantitative easing began to kick into the economy. And what it did is it affects assets. Because you can print all the money you like, central government, print as much of it as you like. But what you can't do is print well-located property. If I've got a piece of land with a property building on it and it's 5-10 minutes walk from a zone 2 tube station, you can't print that. And as long as people want to live in those areas, you print more money, then whatever's finite will grow in value. And that's exactly what happened with finite assets as the economy started to recover. Now, what have they done this time round? This time round, last time, in the last recession, £300 billion worth of money was pumped into the economy. This time, it is 900 billion. They've pumped 3 times as much into the economy already. And that is going to have an inflationary effect as soon as employment starts to return to pre-COVID levels. And that's when we'll start to see this upward movement. So, next year, and coming up to next year, and we're already seeing it now. I mean, I'm getting more and more commercial property leads come to me than, say, in the previous few months. That's because businesses are failing. Some businesses are not deciding to return back to work. We got one commercial tenant, they run a pet shop, they're in their 60s, they've decided not to reopen their shop post-COVID. They're going to hand in their lease, and we're going to repurpose that building by putting a flat in the back. A lot of landlords are being challenged, particularly landlords who are over-leveraged, had poor cash flows. those guys are suffering and are looking to sell up. Now, you've got to also remember how commercial property is owned. Now, the residential market is most of the residential market is owned by owner-occupiers. Investors don't even account for 10% of the residential property market. Commercial property, owner-occupiers don't even account for 10%. It's investors that own 90% of the commercial property market. It's a complete inverse. So commercial values and investment values are much more important in commercial property than they are in residential property. Now, many commercial properties are owned by funds, and you can trade, you can buy units in these funds. If you just look them up in the FT. Now, traded funds have parameters within which they work. So if commercial values or commercial rents are falling a little bit, and remember, commercial funds, it's not in their remit to do repurposing. A fund that's owning a whole bunch of commercial property, they're not going to apply for permitted development and do any repurposing. It's not in their remit. They're just simple buy hold type of people. If asset values, or as asset values fall a little bit because rents are being a bit challenged, they have to, it's within their terms of reference to dispose of those assets and cash up the fund. So there's all sorts of things going on in commercial property that's unique to the commercial property space, which just doesn't happen in residential property, which is going to result in more commercial properties coming on the market than ever before. The thing that's different this time round is that I think the government knows this. The government knows the economic effect that COVID-19 is going to have, and they know what it's going to have on commercial properties. So I've got this pet theory that the PD rights are knowing this, and they're helping developers kind of repurpose these buildings, because they know that if commercial properties cannot easily be repurposed, if they become defunct and you can't repurpose them, then that sends the house of cards of the economy going right down. Banks would be in deep, commercial property is only valuable if it has a rent roll, if it generates a cash flow. Otherwise, the commercial property has no value. And the amount of banks with money invested in commercial real estate, if it cannot be easily repurposed, the banks are heading for another crisis. So I think this, knowing all of this, the government has introduced a whole bunch of permitted development rights, more so than we've ever had before, to allow developers to repurpose commercial buildings, not just into residential uses, but to easily repurpose them into other commercial uses. Now, here's the other thing that's very interesting about commercial property repurposing. Now, commercial properties only exist for commerce. Throughout history, there has been periods where commercial properties have been defunct. Now, I love Camden Market, for example. Camden Market was originally stables for horses. There were 10,000 horses that served North London, stationed in Camden Market. Now, when the motor car came in, that commercial real estate became defunct. So it had to be repurposed. You know, in the 80s, in the 1980s, when a lot of manufacturing started to move abroad, there were whole swathes of factories that became defunct. Warehousing, dockside warehouses and the like, they became defunct, and those had to be repurposed. Now, with all the mass repurposing of commercial real estate that's taken place throughout time, these have all been big buildings. And big buildings, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 square foot, who can do those? It's the big developers that have cashed in on repurposing commercial buildings in the past. What's happening now? It's us, the little guys, that can get involved. Why? Because the sorts of commercial buildings that are becoming defunct now are too small for the big developers to want to get involved in. Now, I'm not talking about things like Debenhams and John Lewis. Those are too big. You know, none of you or me are going to repurpose an into shopping center or a big Debenhams branch. They are going to be big developers who'll be knocking them down, building hotels or whatever it is in their place. What I'm talking about are things like the betting shop. The 60% of all betting shops are going to shut down over the next couple of years because changes in the rules that govern what they can do in a betting shop. But that's another story. 60% are going to shut down, and they're already shutting down in droves. Think of a betting shop near you, a William Hill or a Cole. What do they look like? They're small. You've got a shop and you've got a couple of floors above. You know, the opportunity there is you can put a flat in the back, you can put a couple of flats above, you can make 3 flats and a smaller shop, very easily under permitted development. That sort of scheme is of no interest to a large developer. It's too small fry. But guess what? The kind of commercial buildings that are repurposable now are ideal for the small-time developer, because if you've done a small extension, you've put in a couple of en-suites into an HMO, that's within your grasp. What I find is that these small-scale commercial repurposing opportunities are, they're too small. I mean, it's too small for some of the big developers. They're not interested. And a lot of the residential developers don't understand the language. They don't understand the language, the terminology, navigating their way around commercial property and the buying process, and the legal considerations, everything they find new. And because they don't know, they don't go for it. So there's this wide open goal of opportunity of small commercial repurposing projects, which are too small for the big guys, and residential folks just don't know anything about them. So, and these are going to accelerate. We're going to have more than ever before because of the recession, because of business failures, and because of shops decided to close, old business models not working. Old business models not working, what we've seen with coronavirus is that 10 years worth of change on the high street is now being condensed into a couple of months, quite frankly. So whole swathes of buildings are becoming completely defunct for that reason. Now, the other thing that I would like to point out is what happens in a recession with regards to financing commercial property transactions. Commercial property transactions, I mean, of course, traditional financiers like banks and everything start to reduce loan to values and start to be a bit wary of commercial property. Now, what happens though is that commercial properties take longer to sell. They take longer to sell, and supply demand is in the buyer's favor. It becomes a buyer's market. Now, all the creative financing techniques that you would have heard of, whether it's lease options, subject to offers, delayed completions, option agreements, vendor financing, all of these creative structures were born in the world of commercial property. And what people did is they kind of ported them across to the residential world. And in my view, they don't sit well in residential property, but they work a treat in commercial property. If I want to do a lease option, you would consult a commercial lawyer to make that happen. That's just the way it is. These are commercial property techniques. Now, how can that be used? Let me just explain what we do. Now, we use a variety of techniques to source our properties, direct to vendor, and commercial agents as well. And the great thing about commercial agents as opposed to residential agents, if you want to buy a property through a commercial agent and you say, well, can I do an option on this? The agent will understand what you're talking about. They'll understand what you're talking about, and they will entertain that proposal. Whereas a residential sales agent won't know what you're talking about. It's just a completely different world. Commercial agents tend to be trained in real estate. Often they're RICS surveyors. They understand these sort of financing techniques. So let's rewind a little bit. What am I talking about when I'm talking about creative financing? What you're talking about is using the fact that it's a buyer's market to slow down the transaction so that you can time the outflows of money to work with your pot. Let me just explain what I mean by that and give you a practical example. You finance you find a property deal. Like one of my masterminders has found a carpet shop through a direct to vendor letter. So the carpet shop comprises of a space above, which is currently used for storage. Under permitted development rights, you can make 2 flats above that carpet shop. So the deal that he's struck with the vendor is this. He's first of all securing the site with an option agreement. That means that the option agreement says, I intend to buy this property from you at a future point in time, a year away, at this predetermined price. But for that option, for that right to buy, I'm going to, give you £1. I think in this case, it was £5,000 was the option amount to secure that deal. So that what he's now doing is implementing his permitted development rights to make 2 flats above that shop. By getting that certificate of lawful use in place so that he can demonstrate that he's got that permission to build the 2 flats above, he can then get financing to complete the purchase of the property based on the increased value of it. Because as soon as you get the actual piece of paper that says, hey, I can implement my PD rights, you get that in cast stone, if you like, on a piece of paper. You can go to a bridging financier and get the property valued with the benefit of that permission in place. So to put it simply, you find the site, you secure it, you uplift the value, usually by getting your permission in place to do some permitted development conversion. And then you complete the purchase of the property based on the enhanced value of the property, which takes into account the repurposing value uplift. That allows you to complete the purchase using the minimum of your own funds. And this is very, very powerful. Even if you're buying an empty shop, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. I've talked so far about repurposing to residential use, but there's also repurposing to other commercial uses. From September, it's going to be a lot easier to take an old newsagent shop and make it into a restaurant. Now, if a shop is vacant, a newsagent shop is vacant, and you can find someone that wants to occupy it, then you immediately uplift the value of that site. So I've got guys on a guy on my mastermind program secured a site. This is before it became permitted development to do so. Secured a site with an option agreement, which was empty shop. Then kind of got an agreement to let from one of the pizza delivery companies. They are subject to getting permission, planning permission for a change of use to allow it to do pizza delivery, basically, from that site. Once that planning permission was got, it dramatically increased the value of that property, which allowed him to finance the purchase, so to complete on the option, and then to let the property to the waiting tenant. So you can use this delayed financing, this creative financing toolbox in all sorts of different ways. And I've just scratched the surface, and I'm sorry for being so quick. But basically what you're doing is finding the site, securing it, then getting the uplift through repurposing the building, then completing the purchase based on its uplifted value and financing it based on that value. With commercial property, there is no 6-month rule. It doesn't matter if the commercial valuer values it based on its cash flow at its new level. It doesn't matter what you're buying it for, anything like that. Those things just do not matter with commercial real estate. It's a completely different world. So the times when I've had the most fun have really been in recession. Quite frankly, I've never ever topped the deals I've done in recessionary periods. The best time I've had, early 1990s, 2009 to 2013, and also over these next few years, sorry for the typo on that slide, 2020 to 2023 are going to be a terrific time for that you won't be able to top again. Because in a recession, I'll show you some little graphs about what I mean by this, is you're capitalizing on the fact that property prices are well down on their long-term average. And if you time purchase, if you're buying distressed assets from motivated sellers, and it's a time of depression, recession anyway, and then you add value to those assets, add significant value through repurposing, and then get them spun out because you're cash flowing them and you refinance them, then basically you just hold on until the next boom. It's as simple as that. And this time round, we have more in this recession, unlike any others that I've played in the past. There's more opportunities to convert or repurpose commercial buildings to residential use with the minimum of red tape, because it's permitted development as opposed to going through convoluted planning permissions. Warren Buffett is one of my favorite dudes. He says, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. It's often quoted, but let me just break down what that means in the property space and for your commercial property investment game going forward over the next few years. We all know about buying from motivated sellers. Now, what makes a seller motivated? The principal thing that goes up in recessions is default rates, loan defaults, I mean. Loan defaults start to go through the roof at times of recession. And that causes more people to be motivated. Now, if you combine finding a motivated seller with having a distressed property, distressed properties in good times are harder to sell. Things that have structural issues, lease issues, planning irregularities, properties in disrepair, all these sort of issues make a property distressed. You combine those two things and you get a double whammy of price reduction, a bargain, if you like, that you can pick up. And there's this other third effect, which is only happens in recession. It's what I call disorder. It's in a recessionary time. It's in political uncertainty. It's when there's stuff going on that means that people are thinking again. The general market is thinking again about investing in property. Now, when you combine all these three things, motivated sellers with distressed properties, which you're buying at times of disorder, you start to get a magnificent opportunity to pick up some fantastic assets. Now, if you buy those assets and then repurpose them, what you're doing is you're increasing their value. You're adding value to them right now. I mean, the economy is stuffed. It's going to be stuffed for the next few years, but I ain't bothered. If you do this, you make your own economy. You make your own economy around you because you're buying stuff that is at a reduced price, first of all. That ensures you against any possible downside. Then you are increasing the value of that asset by repurposing. And with commercial real estate, you're repurposing the asset either to residential fully or partial residential and keeping some commercial element, or you're repurposing it to another commercial use. You're doing one of those things, and you're doing that makes the asset cash flow, and cash flow well. And if it cash flows, that determines the value of the asset. It's as simple as that. So you uplift the value in the here and now without waiting for the kind of market to do it for you. Now, these are the times in my career that I've had a lot of fun. The red line shows the long-term average property prices in the UK. It generally moves up over time. The blue line shows the property market cycle. You tend to find there are times where the market is booming and prices are above the long-term average line. And there are times when the market's a bit depressed and prices are below the long-term average line. The best time to do this is the times of green, because already you're buying at times which are below the long-term average line. Combine that with motivated sellers, distressed assets, and times of depression, and you really are onto a winner. Now, in my 30-year career, these golden times this is the third time it's happened like this. You don't get many. In your property career, you won't get many opportunities like this. And the next few years, it's basically rinse and repeat. 1990, early 1990s, I had no idea what I was doing. I was, there's a couple of things I did that did really right. But by 2009, I'd figured it all out and I was ready. Because there are a couple of golden rules here. Recessions will always follow by, there are people saying, when I look at my YouTube comments, in the people that leave comments on some of my videos, people are saying, oh, there's going to be a 70% crash, it's going to be Armageddon, it's going to be this. I mean, people overplay, the doom and gloom. There will be a little bit of a dip, but the fact is you can buy well by making sure you buy from motivated sellers, distressed properties at times of disorder. So you're never buying anything in A1 condition, market value and all of that in a recession. You've got to be buying it at below the recessionary value. Then it's got to be stuff that you can add a lot of value to through repurposing. that gets you your insurance policy against buying something that you're going to lose out on in the short term. Now, when you do this, you simply cannot lose. When we're in a recession, there'll be people that will be doom and gloom and saying the recession that will never end. Those guys will miss the opportunity. Likewise, in a boom, there are people that think it's going to boom, 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 and the boom years will never end. They're the ones that go bust because they over leverage. They think prices are going to go up forever, and they don't. Booms always end, and it results in a crash. Crashes always end, and they result in a boom. All you got to do is invest right at whatever stage that you're doing. In a boom, you prepare. You know that the crash is coming. You make sure you cash flow well. You make sure you're running a ship-shape business. You're lean, mean. You got a good credit score. You have some cash reserves. You assume that the music's going to stop soon, and you are prepared to pivot. You've got to just play this game sort of well. So what I'm looking at doing is pretty much rinse and repeat of what we really did in 2009. Because 2009, I kind of felt we'd figured this out. What did we do in 2009? I'll just give you some examples if you like. This is a 4-story block of 4 flats in Camden. This was purchased in March 2009, literally a couple of weeks after the Lehman's crash and when it was all a massive disaster. This was a motivated seller. It was a property in distress. You can see from the before picture, it's got a tarpaulin on the roof. It was virtually unmortgageable, all of that sort of stuff. And it was a time of massive economic uncertainty as the recession was setting in. What we did is it was already 4 flats. When we had the whole building, we just kind of changed the layouts a little bit because these were all 2-bedroom flats with a generous kitchen and a generous lounge. We just moved the kitchen and the lounge and made the kitchen into a bedroom, added on suites to all the bedrooms, and rented each flat out as a unlicensed HMO. So each flat is 4 rooms. It doesn't need an HMO license, and there's 16 HMO rooms in the whole building. So within 6 months of buying that, we managed to get the building cash flow positive, cash flow generating, by sort of repurposing it to a high cash flow residential use. Got it refinanced and literally pulled out all our money, our purchase costs and cost of conversion. This one I financed with some private investors, paid off all the private investors, and it just went on. This is one of the commercial properties that we picked up. This is 2011. This is the parade of 3 shops that you see there. There's a cost cutter on the corner and a double unit on the to the left of that. Again, this was actually picked up. It was 3 shops, but it was picked up from 2 vendors. The corner shop was owned by 1 vendor, and the one labeled Emily's Home was actually owned by it was a repossessed property from a big bank. Now it was quite amazing. We paid less for that property than the bank had loan outstanding on that property. I mean, it was just a phenomenal time. You can see broken windows, the cost cutter was burnt out, distressed properties, motivated sellers, time of recession disorder, ripe for repurposing. We got some premium tenants in there. We got a Costa in there. We got a Greggs. The 3rd shop is London Ambulance. It's a charity shop. We put 3 flats above. Again, with the flats above, we made them into, each flat is 4 rooms, and they rent out as HMO rooms. So they're 12 units above the 3 shops. Got that cash flowing very quickly. As soon as you cash flow the asset, it's very easy to finance. Even in a recession, banks, what they are a bit hazy of is financing stuff which represents a risk. But as soon as you have repurposed it and got it cash flowing, they do want to lend. They just want to lend when there's a bit more security. So again, some of this site was secured using the option type of technique. We got Greggs in on an agreement to let. So we found out that Greggs were looking to expand in this area. We got them to agree to let the property. We had an option agreement on that the double unit, if you like. We completed the purchase once we had got our permissions in place to do the flats, and also we were in a position to sign a lease with the Greggs, because that meant we'd uplifted the value on that sort of double unit, which allowed us to complete. So again, it's this technique of securing the site, repurposing, and then completing based on the enhanced value. The site on the corner was bought on from another vendor. Again, that was using that wasn't a delayed completion technique. That was using a just a straightforward bridging loan, actually, and repurposed and then refinanced as soon as it was cash flow positive with the tenant in situ. So there is plenty of fun to be had over the coming months. Now, I have kind of gone a little bit off script in places, so I'm going to speed up this section because I want to share with you some examples. My next section is why commercial property. So I'm going to whiz through a lot of this because I want to share with you some examples, particularly PD repurposing, and then share with you some next steps and that kind of stuff. So commercial property, I'm talking a lot about repurposing into residential use. That's absolutely great. I love having some commercial property within the portfolio as well. And commercial property, there's still tenants looking for commercial properties right now. I've got one of my masterminders has let a commercial property this week to a Chinese takeaway. Sorry, not take a restaurant. So it's very strange, actually. They had to apply for permission to convert a shop into an A3 restaurant use. But from September, you don't need to apply for that permission. That becomes permitted development. So that sort of taking a shop and making it into a restaurant is going to be a whole lot easier from September. But he's actually let out a property this week. So there are people, I'm not saying all commercial properties will let. There are plenty of properties that you can't let, but there are plenty of properties that you can. And I'll talk a little bit about what the characteristics of the ones that you can. So I love commercial properties. It's long leases, typically 10 years or so, rather than ASTs. You don't need boots on the ground because they're full repairing and insuring leases. My residential property portfolio is all within a few postcodes. My commercial property portfolio is all over the place. I have commercial property 300-400 miles away from where I live because they're full repairing, insuring leases, and you don't have to get involved in day-to-day management of any kind, which makes it very, very attractive. Commercial property is worth having because the regulation and the rules and regulations are far simpler. They're business contracts. They're not like residential tenancies. And therefore the cost of compliance with rules and regulations is far less and far simpler. Stamp duty on commercial properties is a lot less as well. And the interesting thing to note that if you have a mixed use property, like say a shop with 2 floors of flats above or 3 floors of flats above, the whole of that property can be purchased on commercial stamp duty rates, and that can be a great saving over residential property. One of the things that attracted me to commercial property was the diversification, and this it gets me financial freedom. A lot of people with residential property end up buying themselves a job. You got 20 units of residential property, you're managing them yourself, or if you have an agent, you're still managing the agent. Commercial property is hands off. When I got into residential property in the 1990s, I was buying properties off tired landlords. So one of my strategies was to target tired landlords with a few residential properties, and we'd buy them. And what I'd do is I'd never mind how I bought them, option agreements, this, that, and the other, but I'd target tired landlords. And I'd meet these guys in their 70s, and they were just fed up. They were fed up with running residential properties. They're fed up with residential tenants. Now, after picking up a few properties from tired landlords, I thought to myself, because I was in my 20s at that time, what's to stop me being that tired landlord when I'm their age? What am I really doing that's any different to them? And then I'd meet commercial landlords in their 70s, and they weren't tired at all. If you're a commercial property owner and You know, you're 75 years old, and I've met people like this. They own a McDonald's drive-through 300 miles away from where they live. The rent is 100 grand a year, and it's paid quarterly in advance, and it's a full repairing and insuring lease, and it's a 20-year lease with no break clause. There's more there's more time left on the lease than they're likely to have on Earth. So commercial property really delivers that financial freedom dream. So it's something that's well worth getting into. Again, we're not going to talk about it this evening because we just haven't got time, but it's also a great pension strategy as well. If you haven't got a final salary scheme, investing in commercial property as part of your pension is a phenomenally efficient way of doing stuff as well. So these two principles have meant that our commercial property over COVID-19 has been absolutely fantastic. It's been rock solid, and we've had the minimum of defaults and non-paying tenants. When we don't buy commercial property unless we are sure that it has alternative commercial occupiers that want to take up that property. So if I'm buying a shop that's let to Costa, if they want to pack up, I want to be sure that I've got other commercial property occupiers willing to take up that store. And my second thing is, I will only buy commercial property if it has alternative, easily realizable uses. I want a plan A, B, C, and I can repurpose it to other commercial uses or other residential uses, because that means I'm safe and secure. Now, during COVID-19, the biggest problem for us, for all commercial property owners, have been large companies playing the system and basically pleading poverty and saying, hey, can you do something for us on our commercial property rents? Now, we've gone back to all these people and said, you don't want it? Well, then give it back. Because in each one of those cases, we're able to repurpose that building to alternative uses and basically be in a better position than if they continue the tenancy. And that has made us be very, very resilient. If you're a landlord of a commercial property and there is no easy way to repurpose, how do you repurpose a big Debenhams store? It's on 4 floors, it's no windows. You can't make it into something else that easily. And there lies the problem. So the landlord is stuffed. They have no alternate commercial occupier, and they have no easily realizable way of repurposing it. So if Debenhams comes along and says, hey, give us a rent reduction, you're stuffed. Those are the stories that are governing the headlines. With the smaller units, where there are alternative occupiers if the area is good, and they're easily repurposable under permitted development, the landlord has a lot of power. Because if they don't want it, then don't have it. You'll repurpose it under PD. It's as simple as that. I'll just share with you a couple of examples. This is a site we picked up late last year. It's a lovely little site because it's one of these tire and exhaust centers. It's very hard to get planning permission to put up a tire and exhaust center in a residential area. These sites are like gold mines. They're great. So if your tenant wants to move or whatever, we have actually got a national tire and exhaust center chain that it has approached us, and they're happy to take this site if this tenant moves out. So it's got alternative commercial occupier for that building. It's already got so much massing of building on that site that it's relatively straightforward to get the permissions in place to repurpose that building and make something of a significant mass on that building for an alternative use. So it has all the backstops. This is an interesting building that I want to share with you guys. This is a building in Stoke Newington. It's a double-fronted building. It's a double-fronted building in Stoke Newington. So it's 2 retail units with 2 floors above. Now this was purchased at auction. Now, we buy stuff from auction. We buy things directly from vendor. We send out hundreds of letters every quarter to vendors to try to purchase their properties. We also buy properties through commercial agents as well. Sorry. One of the things about commercial properties at auction Sorry. It's not COVID. I just got something stuck in my throat. Well, what was I saying? Commercial properties are auctions. If you win out at an auction, what does it mean? It means you've paid more money than anyone else in the room on the day. With residential property, if you buy a property at auction and it's a 3-bedroom semi-detached for example, everyone knows what you can do with a 3-bedroom semi-detached. We've all seen Homes Under the Hammer. We've seen Sarah Beeny. We all live in residential homes. So we've got an idea of what's possible. So it's very hard for you to spot an angle, an opportunity with a 3-bedroom semi that others won't. With commercial property, it's completely different. It's all to do with what's your plan to generate the optimal cash flow from that site. And if you have thought of something that's better than anyone else has thought of, then you can afford to pay more. I am very successful at commercial auctions. We buy about half of our sites through auctions. That means we're paying more than anyone else in the room. Why are we able to do that? Because I've taken a lot of effort into learning what you can do with commercial buildings through permitted development. And I'm convinced that my plan, I've got a plan, I've got an angle, I've got an opportunity, an outcome for that site that's better than the next guy's. And if my plan is more profitable than yours, then I'll win because I can pay more. So what does that mean in this particular case? Now, many people would looked at this site and said, right, okay, 2 units, 2 retail units, 2 floors above, under permitted development, using Class G permitted development rights. You can make 2 flats above each retail unit. So many people would be looking at this site thinking, hey, it was 2 units, 2 addresses, I can make 4 flats above that site. The important thing to look at is its usage. Now, this was a former HSBC branch. As of 2013, which is a very important date in PD for implementing office to resi conversions, the space above the bank branch was used as office space. It's designated B1 office space. So a different permitted development applies, and that's Class O, which is office to residential conversion. Now, office to residential permitted development rights allow you to convert an office into as many flats as you like. You've got no minimum size considerations, no dwelling mix considerations. Now, this is Stoke Newington. It's a very trendy area. It's a trendy area where micro apartments work. There's a good rental demand for self-contained micro apartments. So our plan was not to implement Class G permitted development rights, which is just would have given us 4 flats above. Our plan is to implement Class O permitted development rights, which is office to residential conversion, which allows us to build 8 micro apartments in the space above. So that puts a completely different cash flow outcome on that building, which allows us to pay more for that building because we can do more with it. We can get a better cash flow outcome from it, which means we can pay more for it. It really is as simple as that. Now, there are plenty of new permitted development rights coming along in September. But we're in this golden period right now. Recession, more properties coming available. We've got new PD rights around the corner. But we've also got old PD rights, which are in their sunset years. This is last of the summer wine for some of the old PD rights, which are Class O, office to residential conversion, Class M, which is making a flat behind a retail unit, and Class G, which is making 1 or 2 flats above a retail unit. Now, those PD rights will continue to be effective until 31st of July 2021. So if you've got a building like this, before 31st of July 2021, you want to apply for the prior approval to get that permission in place. And then once you've got that permission, you have to start works within 3 years of that permission. Otherwise, you will lose it. Now, I know what you're saying. You're probably thinking, what the hell is he talking about? Boris is saying, build, build, build. PD is going to get simpler, isn't it? There's more and more of it around and all the rest of it. Well, that's the headlines, and Boris, he likes talking his headlines, but you got to look behind the detail. And here's the detail, folks. The detail is there's more PD coming. You will be able to do more things with more types of buildings. But, and this is the big but, they will be subject to more checks and balances than the previous PD rights allowed for. There will be more of a checklist of things that you have to tick off. And it will be a little bit more uncertain than the previous PD. Let me give you a classic example of what I mean by this. Office to residential conversion. If to get that under today's rules, it is I submit my prior approval request, which means I put together a couple of plans, I get a planning consultant to help me put my case in, I whack it into the council, and within 56 days, if the council do not respond to my prior approval, then I'm deemed to have got consent. So if they can't be bothered to pull their finger out and look at it, tough. I get the permission by default in 56 days' time. None of the new permitted development rights have that deemed consent. They don't have any time limit for the council granting that permission. So they aren't as generous. So what the council has done, what the government have done, they have actually changed the whole usage class system. Things like A1 shops, which are newsagents and retail stores, A2 shops with banks and betting shops and building societies, travel agents, A3, which is restaurants, and B1, which is office, and D1 usage class, which are things like dentist surgeries, GP surgeries, kids nurseries. All of these usage classes have been smashed together into this new usage class E. And that takes effect from September the 1st. What the government have not done yet is they haven't announced a PD right that's going to be applicable to all properties within this usage class E. So there's something big coming. But my prediction is that that new PD right, which will govern what you can do with everything in class E, will have more checks and balances. They won't be as generous and to developers as the existing rights. So because they haven't announced the new PD that will be applicable to the new class E, what they've said is that the old PD rights will be applicable to the old usage classes until 31st of July 2021. So you get the permission and you've got 3 years to implement it, and then it goes. So this is last of the summer white. It's like Indiana Jones when he's escaping from Temple of Doom or wherever he is, and he's got the stone door is just coming down and his hat's outside and he's just reaching in, pulling in the hat just in time before the door closes. That door is the PD of the old PD rights, and that door is closing 31st of July next year. It's gone. So you've got to figure out how to maximize your because we've got more properties coming available. You've got to maximize the use of these rights. And the rights that I'm talking about are Class O, office to resi, Class M, flats behind a shop. And by the way, you can actually make more than one flat behind a shop under Class M. What normally limits it is light and window positioning and access. And Class G, which is 2 flats above a shop. They're very easy to implement, and you're gonna want to sort of make use of those straight away. This is a typical Class M example of permitted development, which is bunging in a flat behind a shop. And basically, there are plenty of these shops available. They're long and deep. You got no one wants a space behind a shop. So what we tend to do is cut the shop into a smaller unit at the front, and we make the flat at the back. Now here's how it works, and this is magic. When you figure this out, it's just magic. With shops, when you've got a long, deep shop, the space at the back of the shop is worth less than the space at the front. Did you know that? As you go in from the street, the first third of the shop is what they call Zone A. The second third of space is Zone B, and the bit at the back is Zone C. So the rent per square foot of the space at the front of the shop is the most. As you go into the middle of the shop, the rent per square foot of that space drops by half per square foot. And at the back, it drops by half again. Now, residential space doesn't work like this. You know, where if you've got a flat, it's £500 a square foot. It doesn't matter whether that square foot is in the bathroom, the dining room, the lounge, wherever. It's £500 a square foot, wherever that space is in the flat. With commercial property, retail property, it's not like that. Now, here's the magic. Residential rents per square foot are roughly equivalent to Zone A commercial rents per square foot. In other words, residential rents are roughly equivalent to the Zone A commercial rents for the front part of a shop. So that means if you take a valueless rear part of a shop and you convert it into residential use, you've magically uplifted the value of it. And you may have seen some videos that we got on YouTube. The one with Kieran Gill, for example, in West Ealing. She picked up a shop. We actually financed that deal as well. She learned the strategy from coming on my weekend workshop. She met her JV partner, actually sitting next, was with her on that workshop. We actually backed that deal. She bought that property in West Ealing at an auction. She bought it at an auction last year, which meant that anyone could have had it if they knew this stuff. She paid something like 240 for it. It cost her 75 grand-ish to make the flat at the back of the shop. It's all sold now. She finished it just before COVID, but it's all sold now. The flat has sold for just around the £400,000 mark. The shop itself has sold for £180,000. So there's an uplift of value of just close to £200,000 on that one deal. It's taken just short of a year to do, and that's mainly because of COVID. If it wasn't for COVID, she would have been shut down. She would have been out of that deal in about 6-7 months. Absolutely phenomenal. Tons of these sort of deals around. This one is interesting. This is a property, one of our properties that we got. We got the whole building here, and I wanted to share this with you because showing how you can apply multiple PDs to one single site. And that's the thing. One of the things I share with you, I'll talk a little bit about a workshop that I have where I take people through my whole commercial property investing strategies and share with people how you can maximize the PD. Now, too many people waste time, and you haven't got time to waste. Too many people waste time looking at sites and without knowing the things to look for and what makes a good site and what doesn't. Within a few minutes, you should be able to walk away from a site because it's just not worth the hassle. There's a checklist of stuff to look for, and if everything fits, it's going to be a goer. The way that you get a multiple whammy of uplift in a site is to implement multiple PD rights on the same site. Now, this building, it's 4 retail units. There's a car park, 22 car park spaces at the back, which is part of the freehold, 4 retail units, and there's an office space on the first floor, which is about 3,500 square foot of first floor office space. Now, under Class O, which is office to residential conversion, we can convert the convert the office space into residential flats. We can make as many flats as we want, depending on what we want to do with the market. We're going to do 1-bedroom flats here, and we're going to do 8 on the first floor. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but under Class O, office to resi, you can convert the entire space into flats under PD. That includes the roof space. You may look at that roof space. I can put flats in there. I can put 4 flats in that roof under permitted development. I can put Velux lights, Velux roof lights in under permitted development. Now, what we will be doing is we want to put some dormer windows at the back. That we'll have to apply planning permission for, and we'll get that. The biggest prize is to secure permitted development for the change of use into residential. And then a lot of these small fry adding dormers is relatively easy. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is Class M. Class M is to do a flat or flats behind a retail unit. So there's 4 retail units. We're going to make, we're basically going to chop the shops in half and make the rear part into a flat. So there'll be basically 4 flats using Class M at the back of those 4 retail units. Once we have implemented our permitted development to get those flats, now those particular flats that we're doing at the back of the shops are going to be rather small. So because we've got the car park, once the permitted development and the principle of change of use is done, we will then apply for ground floor planning permission to extend those flats into the car park with a single story extension to make those flats much, much better. So this is all done. The bulk of it, the biggest prize of all, is getting the change of use under permitted development, and then the rest is relatively sort of low risk, easy to get done planning permission to make the sort of make it a bit of an icing on the cake kind of thing. But the bulk of what you want to do, you can do under permitted development. That's the interesting thing. Now, this is quite an interesting deal for us, because we've had this property for and I mentioned in the beginning, we've gone through all our entire portfolio and we've found 15,000 square foot of space where we can either repurpose or add to using new or existing rules. Now, the tenancy for the upstairs office actually ends next year. So we're getting our skates on right now and putting in the application for that change of use with the office to residential conversion element. Now, the shops, the leases come up for those in late 2022. So what we're going to do is delay our application for Class M to put the flats at the back. We'll probably get around to doing that round about sort of March next year type of thing. So you put in the application, the prior approval, it takes 56 days. From the date that it comes through, you've got 3 years to implement it. So when the tenants move out in 2022, we can start the works, and then no one can stop you from having that right. My fear is that unless we do it this way with this particular site, those PDs will go. Those PDs they will change, because this entire property becomes Class E. And the things that you can do, we will be able to do redevelopment with this under the new PD, which hasn't been announced. But I don't think it's going to be as easy and straightforward as the current rules that we have on the table, which are absolutely fantastic. This is our office building in St Albans. Lovely little office building, but under the new rules, there's a PD that's coming in a few days' time, Class AA, which allows us to put 2 floors above this building. There are 2,700 square foot on each floor, so it's more than 5,000 square foot just there on 2 floors. Very, very easy to get done. Adds phenomenal value to this sort of piece of real estate. So there's plenty to be had there. So I think what I'm trying to say is we've got a ton of opportunity. We've got more commercial properties than ever before that are coming. We've got a lot of smaller properties which big developers ain't going to be interested in. And these are right for the smaller developers. One of the reasons Boris has done all these PD rights for smaller sites is because they recognize a big problem. 40 years ago, 30% of all new dwellings that came on to the market were introduced by small-scale developers. Now, only 12% of new housing is provided by small-scale developers. One of the big reasons for that is that the small-scale developers can't afford the planning process. The planning process is pain in the ass. There's too much uncertainty. It takes too long to get stuff done. So what they wanted to do was give more certainty. All this zone stuff that's coming in and the stuff that you can do. Yes, you still have to go through a few hoops, but it brings more certainty to the planning process. that means that smaller developers can come back in the game. They can come back in the game for small sites, and they can come back in the game for financing because there's a bit more certainty. This is one of the big things that they wanted to do. So we've got plenty of new rights coming in. What I haven't really talked about is Class E. You can now repurpose commercial buildings to other commercial uses. They are. We've got this guy on our mastermind program. He's got this former GP surgery, which has got a little car park and all the rest of it. Now, those were operated under D1 usage. From September, he can repurpose that into a convenience store with no planning permission. So he can let that out to there are some of these chains that are expanding actually, and he's got an agreement to let from one of those chains. I can't really sort of talk about who that is, but they're potentially looking at taking that particular site. And this will be from September the 1st, because up till now, it's been virtually impossible to take a D1 unit and convert it into an A1. Now you can you can take a newsagent and make it a restaurant. Yeah, you can take an old GP surgery and make it into a Tesco Metro. You know, you can now do so much repurposing within commercial space as from September. You've got additional rights to build additional floors on buildings, and you've got the sunset rights on the old PD, which apply until 31st of July next year. And you've got more commercial properties coming to the market, and the prices are going to get even better as the recession sort of takes hold. So we've got these multiple things that are all kind of coming together. Now, so it really is time now to have your wits about you, take emotion out of the game. For me, it's about rinsing and repeating what we did back in 2009. I knew exactly what to do back then. Had really a field day with distressed assets, motivated sellers, and times of disorders, which means you can structure deals how you want to do it. You can slow down the transaction to match your availability of funds. Why? Because the vendor doesn't have too many other options available to them. The properties are not selling. So if you're pitching them an offer, yes, it's slightly creative, and it means that you secure the site, but you'll give them. For me, the idea of delaying the payment is about giving them closer to what they want when no one else is willing to do so, because you are securing the site, you're bagging the uplift, and then you're refinancing based on the uplifted value, which allows you to get the financing to complete on that transaction. Now, if you're clued up with all the different techniques that you can do, it really is easy pickings. So we're coming to that time again. What I have been asked to talk a little bit about, and I'll spend a few minutes just going through this, because I've got a workshop which a lot of people have asked me about. This is the last one that I'm doing this year. The next one, we may do another one next year, but that won't be until March. Now, I'd actually set the dates for this at the beginning of the year. We've done 4 workshops. This will be the 4th and final one for this year. I set the dates for this at the beginning of the year, but I could have timed it better, quite frankly. This is all new content that's specifically focused around maximizing the PD rights. Now, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a planning consultant. I'm doing this from the entrepreneur's point of view. As I said, we have gone through our portfolio with a fine-tooth comb to look at 15,000 square foot of space that we're repurposing or creating with new and existing PD rights. So I know about all the details of how to sort of find these sites. The other thing that I do for people who come on the workshop is I give them all my checklists. Because I know, like, for example, to maximize your, to find a site where you can maximize your use of the existing PD rights in their sunset years, I've got a 10-point checklist. Now, when people are looking for commercial property, what I find, very few people have a requirements list. What are your requirements? You're going to pitch an agent. What are your requirements? I'll give you that. I'll give you the requirements, your requirements list. So it's your shopping list of things to look for. And if all of those are ticked, then you've got a site. You don't have to waste your time looking at shit. You just spend your time looking at laser targeting your efforts on the sites that are actually going to work. I mean, for example, if you're wanting to make Class M, which is flats behind a shop, don't bother if it's a conservation area or a listed building. It ain't going to happen. It's not valid. You know, so there are all these sort of checklists of things that you have to look for to make sure that you can actually sort of do the stuff. So I run this workshop. It's 2 days. It's pretty intense. I'll run through with you the 8 modules of the workshop. It's my A to Z of commercial property. It's how to basically succeed in the fascinating world of commercial property, building, repurposing, and letting out and running a commercial property portfolio. How to find them, how to fund them, how to fill them, the whole gamut. We run this as a 2-day workshop. Obviously, we're doing this over Zoom. But we run it exactly the same as we would do a live type of workshop event. But it's slightly different because the trouble with workshops is that you're going to learn a huge amount over a weekend, and you are not going to be able to take it all in, and you're going to have questions that you're not going to come up with all the questions within the weekend. It's impossible. The questions will happen as you implement. So what this is, it's a weekend followed by 8 weeks worth of support. It's like an 8-week course, really. We start with an intense weekend on the weekend of 26th and 27th. And we take you through the whole thing. And then there's 8 weeks of support and coaching and group coaching where I get you to start finding the deals, bringing the deals to our coaching sessions. We analyze them. We analyze them in a group so that you see what we're looking for and how we kind of process all of this information and find the stuff that's worth doing. Because only when you start to implement do you have the questions. So the workshop is great, but you haven't got all your questions answered because you haven't thought of them yet. You start to do that when you start to implement. So what we cover, my complete sort of A to Z of exploiting the specific commercial property advantages that commercial property holds over residential property, understanding all of that. This is an all new section, which is the A to Z of repurposing commercial properties under PD rights, new and old. Again, this comes from our own experiences of permission. I've been converting commercial buildings to residential use since 2006. So this comes from all of that experience, knowledge, and what we're doing with our own portfolio right now. How to set up your deal sourcing machine, how to find deals through commercial agents, how to find deals through direct to vendors, how to play the commercial property auctions. They're all different and they're all winners, really, quite frankly, and they're all very, very good for right now. Crunching the numbers. I mean, I do this show, Property Elevator, the pitching show I mentioned. Now, one of the things about that show is that when people come and pitch a deal, you got to know, you got 3 or 4 minutes, if you like, when they're pitching a deal to know whether it's a goer or not. So you've got to know what are the few figures to focus on. And really what it's about is what you're buying the asset for. What can you make it into? How much is it going to cost to get it there? And what will it cash flow once it is there? That will dictate what sort of funding you can get. And you know, it is that simple. And I take you through how to crunch the simple numbers of the deal, whether it's viable, first of all, through checklists and all the rest of it, and whether it's viable from a financial point of view, that's from the numbers point of view. Then detailed spreadsheets, that's just validation and a lot more specific information. But you've got to be able to quickly sift through deals to say, is it a goer? Is it a goer from a viability point of view? Can you get PD on it easily? And will it work financially? Finance is not just about bank finance and how commercial funding works and how bridging works and all of that. It's about slowing down the transaction. It's about using creative financing. It's about using options, lease options, delayed completions, option 2, how to pitch creative financing offers, if you like, credibly to a vendor, and an agent, and how to get those accepted. So what you really need is a toolbox of all these creative financing options, which is what this module is all about. And you listen to the vendor's circumstances and you apply the ones that give you a win-win. And it really is easy to give them a win-win, because in a market when they're not selling the damn thing because there's no buyers out there, if you're giving them a good price, which they're happy with, just in exchange for waiting a little bit to get their money, that allows you to get the uplift through PD. It's magic. It really is magic. You can create something out of nothing. I did this relentlessly. Now, I don't recommend this as a no money down thing. You know, I'm not. If a lot of people ask me how much do you need to get started in commercial property, you need 40, 50K. If you've got 50K, and the more money you got, the better. But if you can raise 50K, that's great, because you do need some money. You know, legal fees, planning consultants, feasibility studies. There's stuff that you need to get done to get the. You need to light the fire with a bit of kindle wood, and you need some money. Now, even if you've got a pot of money. Now, in 2009, I had great cash reserves, but I used creative financing techniques, because even with my cash reserves, it's a golden opportunity of only a few years. Now, if I use my cash, I could do 1 or 2 deals at a time, because, you know, that's what you got. But if you use creative financing techniques, you can make your cash go further. Between those 2009 and 2015 years, we had 4 to 5 deals on the go at any one time, and in a bit of a pipeline. And the reason why was not because they were all funded with cash. They were all funded with a mixture of these creative financing techniques, which slows down the transaction and times the outflow of your money to mean that your cash flow position is kind of managed. So you don't need, it's not about no money down, it's about making sure the money you put in is put in at the times that suit you, and you benefit from the uplift, which is very, very important. Finding tenants, you know, finding blue chip tenants is different from finding mom and pop type tenants. They're both great. You know, I talk about how to find the commercial tenants. I've got a guy on my mastermind program. He's getting Screwfix into a site that he's got. You know, this is if you know the process, it's all doable. There's a process for finding the mom and pop hairdresser tenants. There's a process for finding the blue chip tenants. There are some units that the blue chips ain't going to be interested in, but the mom and pops are going to be interested in, and vice versa. Serviced offices are massive. What's happening, like I didn't realize this, we're pre-COVID, we just finished a serviced office building in St Albans, 10,000 square foot. Now, we didn't know this. Obviously, COVID was a bit of an upset, because, you know, we'd just finished the building and no one wanted to rent. But now it's gone ballistic. I'll tell you why it's gone ballistic, because what's happening now is St Albans is a commuter town. People don't want to go into London, but they haven't got space in their homes in suburbia to work all day with screaming kids and open plan kitchen lounges and no dining room, spare living room, study. People don't have homes like that, you know. So where are they going to work if they work from home? So what's growing massively is in the suburbs and in the commuter towns, having flexible office space where people can not commute into the big smoke, but but go to a centre in suburbia. Now, we're doing it in a big way with office buildings, but there's an PD right that allows former retail units to be converted into offices with no planning permission at all. And I've got some of my masterminders who are doing this, where they've taken retail units and they're basically renting desks. It's an HMO model, but for commercial property. So you rent out desks in a retail unit. So I'll take you through the A to Z of doing that. Very fascinating, great cash flow. And commercial property law and tax. The rules are different. Tax can be a great thing. Capital allowances, for example, you can actually save significant chunk of the purchase price of a property. I had my capital allowances guy go in a bank building that we purchased, and he's identified 100 grand worth of capital allowances. So all those vaults and lifts and stuff and air conditioning and all of that, basically they value it, and they give you they work out the capital allowances that you can claim against your corporation tax against subsequent years. So it's a massive saving. It's a fantastic way of, if you know about it. Anyway, more about that later, because it's a massive subject, really. VAT as well. Some properties VATable, and they're important things that you need to know if you take a VAT-registered commercial property and you convert it into residential use, because obviously residential property is not VAT-registered, and there are things, if you do it wrong, you can get into a lot of trouble. Trouble meaning huge VAT bill if you don't get it right. So we take you through the A to Z of commercial property, repurposing, but also finding the things, financing the things, the creative structures, filling the things with tenants, the law and the tax, the number crunching, how to find them through commercial agents, through letting agents, through commercial agents, auctions, and direct to vendor, which is working fantastically right now. I did a workshop in May 2020. That was the last one we did, and on our website you'll find plenty of testimonials on that one. Now I send you a book, a workbook, and you'll get this in the week before the course starts. It's a 300-page workbook. Got one from the May course right here. In there is everything really, every single slide, notes, plenty of case studies, floor plans, checklists, the whole kit and caboodle. And because I don't want you to take notes, and I want you to kind of listen, I want you to absorb and take the relevant notes. I don't want you to kind of copy the slides, if you like. Just take notes on the slides. Everything's in front of you. Absorb the information over the weekend. It's the best way. So we send that out to you in the week before. And this is the latest stuff. This completely been revised for the new PD rights. So you will be among the first to kind of sort of get hold of this information. Now, during our 8 weeks of support, we have a community site, and that is the breathing heart of this course, because you're with a community of people that are implementing this stuff, and you're getting advice from me on how to take forward the workshop and turn it into action. And it's a place where people celebrate their wins as well, and that's lovely to see. Asking questions, people celebrate their wins, the deals that they're doing, and it really. And when we do our deal analysis clinics again, which we do on Thursday evenings over Zoom, you get to see how multiple deals are analysed and how we apply what we do over the weekend. So the weekend is about the information; it's equipping you with everything. The 8 weeks follow-up is about helping you apply it and support you through that application within the support group of other people in your sort of peer group. So there's a lot there. There's 8 weeks of support. The group calls the community site. Everything we do is recorded. So the sessions, we've got some people joining us on this course from in September. I mean, more than I know we've got about 19 places left. I mean, we've filled up massively. We've got people doing this. We've got 4 people doing this from Hong Kong, a couple of people doing it from Europe, one guy doing it from the States. So what and they've asked about time zones. So one of the things we're doing with the weekend course is that the weekend course is being done in British Standard Time. So we start at 9 o'clock in the morning, we finish at 5 on the Saturday and Sunday. But those are being recorded, and if you are in a different time zone, you'll be able to access that within hours of it being live, if you like. So you can catch up sort of very, very quickly if you had issues with time zones or whatever. I know there's one guy who wanted to know, because he really can't make the Saturday, but he wanted to catch up later on Saturday and then come back for the Sunday. So yes, you can do that sort of thing. So the big thing, why now, is because it's a window of opportunity. If you miss it, you can learn this stuff on your own. Of course you can, but you can take 2 or 3 years to figure it all out, and then you end up by the time you've really got to grips of it, the opportunity is gone. It's moved on. Now, this is going to be something which is about first mover advantage. There's always, if you've been in property a long time, there are always these times where you wish you had a DeLorean and you can go back in time. And the amount of people who say to me, 2000, I'd love to go back in time with a DeLorean and invest knowing what I know now. And the thing with many courses is, whenever I've taught commercial property, I've always done this with looking in the rear view mirror. So I've basically come along and said, hey, this is what I've done. And it's all in the rear view mirror because this is past. This is very unique because I've never done a course like that, which is real time. This is what we are actually doing in our business right now. It's how we're taking advantage of the current climate right now. And for the people that join me, you will be in the loop with this current thinking of what we're doing sort of right now. That's why it's limited. I'm not going to run these forever. I'm just kind of doing it for now. I may do one again in March, but it's a limited opportunity. The opportunity is to learn this stuff now. You need to know the new PD right now and look for opportunities right now, because very soon it gets priced into the market once everyone knows and vendors started knowing. In 2013, when Office to Resi came in, by 2015, the vendors knew about it and they priced it into the deals. That's what happened. The same thing will happen again. And also, you need to know how to take advantage of the PD that's going out. The old PD rights, you've only got until 31st of July next year. You want to know how to implement those rights, and I'll take you through exactly how to find sites where those fit. So you learn what we're doing in our business step by step with all the tools and templates and everything that we're using in our own business. You don't have to wait 3 or 4 years to figure it out by yourself. You hit the ground running with what I know works, which we've cut and pasted basically from 2009. The techniques, it's all the same this time round. The only thing that's changed is the new PD. So what are stars from the May course? I mean, several people have done, loads of people have actually done deals within the 8-week period. So the last time I ran this course was May. Satnam is one of our stars, if you like, from that May course. He found this during the 8 weeks post-workshop support period. And I love this deal because it's at auction. That means this is the last Allsop auctions, bang current. So the auction means anyone could have had it. It's not down to anything special. It was there. It was hidden in plain sight. It's just that no one else knew how to put it all together. What's special about this property? Henley upon Thames, it's a shop. Now this shop is a long shop and it fronts on 2 streets. So you can see from the picture, that's the front on one shop, and the back of it fronts onto a different street. So what he saw, because I talk about all the PD on the course, I talk about how you can combine different PDs and cut them and slice them in different clever ways, which other people might not be thinking about. So under PD, you can chop a shop in half and make it into 2 shops. It's under PD. You don't need any permission to do that. So because this shop fronts onto 2 streets, he's chopping it in half. So making one shop that you can see from this street and the other shop from the other street. Now, when you have 2 shops, you have 2 lots of Class G permitted development rights. Above each shop, you can make 2 flats. So the reason this is so exciting is that taking one long, deep shop, which is a bit of a challenge to let, cutting it into 2 smaller shops, both with frontage, and then implementing Class G permitted development rights to make 2 flats above each of those shops, so 4 flats. So many people would have looked at this and thought 2 flats. He knew how to cut and slice and dice the PD to make 4 flats. That meant that his plan was better than anyone else's plan because his plan was more profitable. That allowed him to complete on this, to win this property at auction and implement this particular plan. Terrific deal, plenty more like that, because when you have the workshop and you get got the info you need and 8 weeks of support to get out there and do it, it really does sort of start to happen. Now, one thing that we're doing is a very special event in March, and when you book your place on this workshop, you get this bundled in. Now, in March next year, on Saturday, sorry, the date is not on that slide. I think it's Saturday the 6th. I think it's the third Saturday in March, subject to COVID restrictions. But as soon as COVID allows us to do, we're holding a commercial property networking conference. And that will be all the people that have attended the May event, and also this September event will come to that event. And we'll update you. We'll show you some of the sort of the star performers who have implemented these sort of ideas. You will get a chance to network and meet some people who will share the cutting edge implementation of all these PD ideas. So that will be an update, if you like. One thing that will happen with these new rules, and it always happens, new rules are coming in, there's some gray areas, it'll take a few months before some interpretations have become established. So where can we push the envelope and where can't we? So these are some of the things that we'll update you on at that commercial property conference in March. So you get that bundled in. The whole thing, we have an app, really gone to sort of since COVID and all of that, it's changed a lot of things. But I do talk quite fast. I go through a lot of concepts. Everything is available for you to watch online through our app. You can watch it on your desktop, iPad, mobile phone. So if you find a building that's VAT registered and you wondered what I said about that on the course, then you can go to the VAT registration module and watch that and replay that again. So you have access to all of that. I also give you I run the Baker Street Property Meet. I've run that for more than 4 years now. I'm giving you our vault of past presentations and talks from more than 50 different speakers on all sorts of different topics. Great inspiration stuff. Now, there's lots of stuff that I've got in addition to the weekend, which I'm giving you as bonus modules, which are available through our app. I've got deep dive webinars, webinars that I've done with my Power team. My Power team are planning consultants, are lawyers, conveyancing solicitors, accountants on things like VAT and capital allowances. They take you through a lot of the stuff in a very deep dive kind of way. The best way to learn about commercial property is by doing deal analysis. And I've got over a dozen deals with past students where we kind of take you through from the beginning of the site. We assess the feasibility, we look at the numbers, we look at what you can do with it, and we look at the outcome and the cash flows and all of that. So we give you that as individual webinar sessions so that you can go through. So if you're looking at, say, a shop and uppers, you'll be able to find a shop and uppers, some deal analysis on there of sample deals, and you can go through those. If it's an office to resi, you can go through some of those example case studies. So there's plenty of bonus material, hours and hours of bonus material that's included as well through the app. I don't want you to waste time reinventing the wheel, especially if I have stuff that works. So when I talk about direct to vendor, I'll give you my specific direct to vendor letter templates that work. When you make an offer on a property with a commercial agent, when you present your offer, our offer letter is about 8 pages long, and it's in a specific format which oozes credibility. Because when you make an offer for a property, whether it's to a vendor or through an agent, your paperwork demonstrates your professionalism and your ability to complete, if you like, your credibility. So I give you all of that, explain how you use it. I give you my checklists. My checklist for shop is basically a shopping list, for God's sake. You know, a 10-point shopping list of your requirements for making sure you can implement PD rights on a particular site. You tick all those boxes, great. Next thing, move on to the numbers and analyze those. And I'll give you I give you a complete deal analysis checklist and a template, if you like, for analyzing deals. And all the deal case studies and walkthrough that I mentioned on the previous slide, they're all done in a standard format, which is my deal analysis checklist format. So you can compare and contrast type of deals. And also the creative financing, the templates for all of that, it's all on there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I've also got a bonus module. I used to run a incorporation course, because when you do commercial property, you'll be doing a lot of things through limited companies, and having propcos, opcos, family investment companies, smart companies, the VAT issues, that's all covered on this bonus course, which is available for you to through our app. I'm bundling that in with it as well. And also my first ever home study course, which talked about building a residential portfolio. I bundled that in. This was published between 2005 and 2009, sold 45,000 copies. But I bundled that in because really, I think if you do have time to read that, you kind of see that my thinking and how is that it actually stands the test of time, and how much of it is sort of still true today. So it's an important sort of guide, if you like, to know that you're in the right place. Darren is one of he's done this course as well. He's one of my masterminders now. This is his first commercial property that he bought. It's a trampolining center in a business park. Rents for £55,000 per year, and he came on from this from a point of view of having a portfolio of residential properties, buy-to-lets, and all of that. And he said to me, Ranjan, I bought this property, generates £55,000 a year, rent is paid quarterly in advance. The penny dropped when he realized how much work is involved in generating £55,000 a year in rent roll through residential tenancies, and how little work is involved through this particular unit. Again, it met all my principles: great yield. They're alternative commercial occupiers for this site, and also plenty of PD repurposing opportunities as well. But at the moment, he's enjoying a good income without actually doing much work, and he hasn't actually gone for the repurposing. Nilesh, again, is one of my current students. This is a picture. I went to an auction with him to pick up this property. I like this property because it doesn't look anything special, does it? That's the beauty of commercial property. Sometimes they don't look special. The beauty is in the figures. It's 2 shops, generates a great little yield here. He's just had his permissions through now for 4 flats above there. He's making 4 flats, which is going to up this deal even more. So it's all there to play for. It's just knowing what to look for and how to make these deals kind of happen. So what is the offer, if you like? If you want to kind of join me on this this workshop, it starts on Saturday, 26th of September. It's a full weekend covered by 8 weeks of support to make this happen for you, to allow you to take first mover advantage with the new PD rights, and maximize the opportunity of PD, because repurposing is the game. Why? Because you take commercial property, which is going to be valued lowly. And if you know what you're doing and you repurpose that to an alternative use, the minute you uplift that cash flow, then you uplift its value. And you've uplifted that value in real time. You've uplifted that value right now without waiting for the market to do anything, and that's it. And then guess what? Crashes will eventually fade, and it will go into a boom. And then whatever you have repurposed will just uplift. So what are we doing? We're picking up commercial properties while it's cheap. We're figuring out how to find them, how to fund them with the minimum of your own money in the beginning. We're figuring out how to uplift the value through repurposing. We're figuring out how to get them cash flow positive and refinanced as quickly as possible, move on to the next deal, hold the stuff, and what you will do during these next few golden years will set yourself up for life. You know, I do deals in Boom Times as well, but I never ever managed to match the quality of the deals. I mean, everything that I have bought between 2009 and 2013, 2014 has more than trebled in value. Some properties have quadrupled. You cannot do that in a. Well, maybe you can, maybe you can't, but I've never managed to do deals like that in Boom Times. It's a golden opportunity, and it's going to be for the first movers who will really have a lot of fun with this. So if you want to join me, you'll be joining me on something that we're actually doing in our business. Our last opportunity to kind of sort of join this group. I've never actually done one of these courses where people have booked so far in advance. Normally, a lot of people wait until the last 2 weeks before. They wait until the last 2 weeks before. This is going to be full by that time, because, quite frankly, it's not something you either get this information now or you don't. And there aren't really any other source of this information. I mean, some people have. I shouldn't really say this, but there are some people who run commercial training. Some people run commercial training, and they're doing everything. You know, they're doing service accommodation, they're doing HMOs, they're doing this, they're doing better commercial property training as well. All of those guys have actually either been on or sent people to attend my course. And picked up the information from me. So you might as well pick it up from the horse's mouth, if you like. I've been doing commercial conversion since 2006. You know, one of the reasons I'm doing, I do enjoy sort of training people. I do enjoy taking people along this journey. But one of the things I do also, the people that kind of learn my methodology, you'll have seen some videos on YouTube, some case studies, but I actually, and I'm on this Property Elevator show as well, where I actually invest in deals where people are following the kind of strategies that I teach. I know they're kind of win-win. I mean, I'll let you into a little secret. Some of the smaller type of deals, I don't actually do that many of myself. The kind of deals that I'm doing, like we're looking at buying a main post office at the moment with 2 floors above and a roof space, and we're looking at making that into 20 flats. Those are the sort of deals that we're doing personally. Some of the smaller deals, like do 2 flats above a shop or a flat behind the shop, like Kieran Gill's deal that we did on YouTube. I've done those in the past. I teach those. I tend to invest in my students who are doing that. So one of the reasons I teach this, and I kind of, I just lay it all out. And some people come on this course who've got existing properties and they want to learn how to. Several people actually came on the May course because they've got existing commercial properties, and they came on the course because they want to find out what's the optimum thing they can do with the things. So they learned all the stuff, and they've started with their commercial properties that they had to start with. Some people are just fed up with residential buy-to-let and looking at diversifying into commercial. Some people have seen all these commercial. One of the most common things I get is that people come on the weekend, and we get into the implementation program, the 8-week implementation program, and because their eyes have been opened over the weekend, they suddenly see stuff that's on their goddamn doorstep. They're walking past every single day, and they never even noticed it before. And because it's all in their mind, and they're in this community where we're all doing this sort of stuff and talking about this stuff, they suddenly see something that's been right in front of their nose. And we've had people actually do deals like this, which they didn't notice coming on the course because it just simply wasn't on their radar. So there is an awful lot there. What I'll do is I will take a few questions. Someone's asked me about capital. You can do no money down, but I am not going to sit here and advocate it, because here is the truth. no money down is possible, and I have done no money down deals, but they don't come round that often. Once every couple of years, you get all the stars align in a specific way that allows a deal to be done in a no money down way, and they make a great story and all the rest of it. But and you will get the odd one here and there. But if you want a repeatable, sustainable strategy that will work time after time, you need a little bit of money to get going. How much money? Well, if you can lay your hands on about 50K, you've got enough to do deal after deal after deal in a sustainable, repeatable way. So people are asking about mortgage brokers. Mortgage brokers, yes, it's great to. We'll talk about that on the weekend. I'll let you into some of my team. With mortgage brokers, what I recommend is different than residential brokers. For example, with residential brokers, you can go to any residential mortgage broker, and they've all got pretty much the same products. With commercial lending, it's still a little bit relationship-like, old world-like. And as a result of that, one commercial broker will have 3 or 4 favored borrowers. Another commercial broker will have another 3 or 4 favored borrowers. So I recommend you speak to a different number of commercial brokers. Generally speaking, you need to approach financing in multiple steps. If you play golf, how many times are you going to get a hole in one? Get the hole near the green and then putt it into the hole. It's the same with financing, with commercial property, with the type of stuff I'm talking about. You'll need one set of financing to buy the asset. You may need another set of financing to then convert the asset. And then when it's generating a cash flow, you'll get a long-term lender to finance it thereon, continuing. So it's a kind of, the mistake people I think make is they try to find this hole-in-one type of concept of financing. I should have mentioned this about Faisal's asking a good question about Scotland. The PD rights, you've got to thank devolved government, I'm afraid. All the PD stuff, the commercial property stuff I talk about is national. The PD stuff in particular is England, I'm afraid. So it applies here. Some tips for international investors. I have quite a few international people that seem to come on my courses, either people who are doing something abroad, but they're looking at coming back to the UK. I've got one guy, Andrew, on my mastermind program, who's actually is UK citizen, but he runs a business in America, and he's looking at coming back to the UK later on. And he really epitomizes the approach that I recommend. He learns the stuff, so he wants to learn the stuff so that he knows what he's doing. But he has capital, he has funds through his trading business, but he's physically based in America. So he partners with people because commercial property, more than residential property, works better if it's a we type of business. It's a JV type of proposition. So he uses these sort of programs. He came on the course as well to find JV partners to work with and partner with. So if you are doing this course from abroad, what I do recommend you do is when we do the networking conference in March next year, do try to put it in your diary to come down for that, because that'll be where you will meet some very interesting JV partners who are all living and breathing the same strategies, and things just happen a lot better if you work with people on the ground, particularly to source properties and make the groundwork happen. If you're from abroad, then and you got no money, then it's very difficult. If you're abroad and you got money, but you haven't got local presence and haven't necessarily got local time, then it's easy. Very, very straightforward indeed. Let me just have a look at this is a good one. Andy, when are you planning to start purchasing, given your comments? I have got some irons in the fire right now. I don't know. Did I mention the? No, I think I did. I mentioned the post office transaction. We're hoping to get that one signed and sealed before the end of the year. This is being bought directly off the post office, so dealing with these sort of public sector organisations it takes its own merry time, I'm afraid. But yeah, no, I'm looking to do deals now. The reason I'm looking to do deals now is because I don't care. The reason I don't care is because I'm looking not at the wider economy, but my economy. My economy is, what am I buying it for? What can I do with it? How much is it going to cost me to uplift its value? And when I've uplifted the value, will it cash flow at a level that lets me finance it and pull out most of my money? So if I can do that, which I can make it cash flow, and then I can refinance it, then I'm not bothered. Once you've repurposed it and cash flowed it and refinanced it, you're out of the deal. Then you go on to the next one. It's as simple as that. The problem with timing the market, well, you shouldn't really try, because you never will. If you're going out now and buying property at market value, which has no redevelopment potential or no repurposing potential, you're nuts. You're nuts. Because if you buy something at market value with no repurposing potential, the chances are it'll be down in value next year. If you buy stuff today, which you're buying because it's distressed or motivated seller, you're buying at a slight discount, plus it's got repurposing potential, which allows you to get an uplift in value and cash flow, then that insures you against any short-term downside. It's as simple as that. So yes, buying now, of course. Where can I sign up? You can do that. There should be an offer kind of window that I have put up. I've put the link to actually book the place, and you can find out about the actual on the bottom of the slide, succeedinproperty.com/workshop. That takes you through the complete course, the 8 modules. There's a little video on there that tells you how it all works, and you can book that link. So you can book the whole thing on there. It's as simple as that. We'll send you a replay for this as well, with some of the, what do you call it, links and how you can book on it and that kind of stuff. I got an email I got a chat from Jonathan. I went on the course in January, Ranjan. It was fantastic. Can I purchase the workbook again, as the dog ate it? Listen, Jonathan, I remember you. You've made me laugh. The dog ate it. You don't have to repurchase it. I'll send you one. I'll send you one out. That's Jonathan Berliand. He came on the January workshop. I remember him well. I'll just get in touch on during the week. I'll send you something out. Dog ate it. That's a lovely one. Okay. What else? Oh, right. This is an very good question from, can't be real name, Hippo Popo. As commercial, might be real name. Sorry if I've offended. I didn't mean that. What was the question? And as commercial properties are usually more, is it 4 times salary criteria? Now you're thinking, you've got your head in the residential space. And this is the point of this workshop, if you like. I'm reprogramming you from residential to commercial. It's a different language. It doesn't matter what your salary is. Your salary doesn't matter 2 hoots. It's the cash flow of the site. Commercial property is valued. The long-term lender is interested in how much cash flow that is generating. Simple example, we have with our serviced office building in St Albans, it's now serviced offices. When you do serviced offices, you uplift the cash flow considerably. It's the equivalent of letting out a flat on a single family let or doing an HMO. HMOs are slightly more work, but you get more cash flow. It's same with serviced offices. You get about 3 times as much rent on a serviced office than you would do if you're renting it out on a normal FRI lease. By uplifting the cash flow, you uplift the value of the building. because the building is valued on the cash flow it generates. It's nothing to do with your salary. It's this salary that the building generates for you. That's what dictates what you can borrow with commercial property. Very important difference. Can anyone with absolutely no experience in property development actually succeed as a beginner? Would they need general property development experience? That's from P Zippo. It helps if you've refurbished a property or put together an HMO. Of course, it helps. We do give you some pointers on that. It's not strictly a property development course, but I'd like to share with you one other angle, which I haven't actually mentioned. You don't actually have to build out. The big chunk of the value uplift comes from securing the permission in the first place. You get the permission, and then you can flip it on. There are some of the sites that I have showed you tonight, our deals, because they're a little bit further away from. I bought them as commercial properties. They're a little bit further from my home and all the rest of it. One of the options that I'm thinking of doing with those sites is we're getting the permissions in place, and then we'll flip those on. We'll sell them with the permissions in place, because a big chunk of value uplift comes from actually getting the permission. So you don't necessarily have to build out if you don't want to, or you don't feel that's your bag, or you don't want to manage that project in that particular area. That is kind of up to you. But a very, very good question. Okay, Heather is asking, is it feasible to have commercial? Sorry, to start with commercial if you don't have resi experience? Yes, I've never quite understood this, because people seem to some people go around thinking that you need to graduate in residential property before you get onto commercial property. Commercial property is completely different to residential property. So why do you have to learn about one before you have to do the other? It's a different set of law rules. Tenancy law is different. The financing system is completely different. The language is different. The way you approach commercial agents is different. Commercial auctions are different. The due diligence is different. The financing methods are different. The creative financing techniques is completely different. So why would you need to learn about something else? I think residential property is something that people naturally go into because we all live in one, don't we? We all live in a residential property, so we think, okay, let's do this as a bit of buy-to-let. You don't need residential experience to get into commercial property. But a very, very good question. How do you work out the conversion? Oh, very, very good question from Aid. How do you work out the conversion cost per square foot? And now this is something that we cover in our numbers analysis on the course. But I'll give you a quick little summary of what that's about. Different types of buildings will, with existing buildings, different types of buildings will cost you different amounts of money to convert. So for example, if you've got an older building with lots of load-bearing walls, you will have to strip those out, move them, put in some steels. That will cost you a little bit of money. If you've got, say, with offices, if you've got a 1950s office building, it may have some asbestos in it. That will cost you a little bit more to remove. But if you've got a building that was constructed in the late 70s or 80s, it won't have that. So it'll cost you less to convert that building. This is very, very important, because what happens is that in some lower value areas, like if you're doing a deal in high value areas in the southeast, and you've got a ton of asbestos to remove, it'll be worth your while. Because when you pay 100 grand to remove the asbestos, the value of the end flats in that area is so high that it's worth it. Going back to Kieran's deal in Ealing, she's made a flat at the back. She's sold it for £400,000. It's cost her 70 grand to convert that flat, that space at the rear of the shop, into a flat. There are parts of the UK where it would still cost you 60, 50, 60, 70 grand to convert the flat, because the cost is meeting all the building regulations, the fire and the sound and all of that sort of stuff. So it'll still cost you 60, 70 grand. But there are places in Blackpool and some desolate areas up north where it'll cost you more to convert the space behind a shop into a flat than you'll actually get from the flat itself. So, and there's some areas where they're not desolate, but they're kind of mid-range areas. So it's not worth converting an office with tons of asbestos, but it is worth converting an office which is, say, built in the late 70s, early 80s, where the cost of conversions would be a little less. So if you were doing new build, the groundworks is the variable. Once you've built to damp-proof course level, the cost of construction is predictable, and you can say cost per square foot is this. With conversions, it depends. It depends on what you've got to work with, the age of that building, and I'll take you through all those factors on the course. And it also depends on the end values. What are the end values of the flats you're going to create? Now, there's some areas where it's not going to be worthwhile at all. There are some areas where only certain types of buildings will be economically viable. Now, this is the thing that's happening with PD right now. There's going to be a whole bunch of new rules that will come, and we'll have that dissected for you by the time this course takes place, the new rules that are going to be announced in the next coming weeks. Now, you'll be able to do a lot of stuff to a lot of different types of buildings. Just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. So yes, we will take you through the PD and say you can do this to this building, this to this building, this to that building. But should you do it? That's where the numbers come in. Just because you can, will it be economically viable? And you need to understand both points. Now, a lot of people are telling me that they have booked on to the course. That's brilliant. Look forward to having you guys there. If you have booked on, just let me know in the chat window. Got Nishma coming on board, got Diane, David, Rogers, Mohin, quite a few people actually that are coming up. Jenny, just to name but a few. As I said, you know, you're in the right place. It'll be a sort of, you'll be the first to know this stuff. The other interesting thing that's likely to come, because this presents a little bit of a problem actually, loads of PD. As I said, there'll be mid-value areas and high-value areas where it's a no-brainer, get on and do it. But there's all these places up north in Blackpool, for example, which will need rescuing, but it's uneconomic to do a lot of this stuff there. Now, what's likely to come, not likely to come, it will come actually. For those sort of areas, the government will be doing some grants because they've got to be repurposed in some way. Something's got to happen. So it's not as though this sort of stuff won't be we don't know about the grants yet. They haven't been announced, the ifs and buts and all of that, but they've said that they're going to do that. So PD is going to be something where it's going to be for all over once those grants are kind of announced. Let me just have a look. First time would be, is it feasible to start? Oh, I've answered that one. I've answered the Scotland one. Scotland is difficult, but it's not difficult. The PD rights that I talk about are England. They haven't announced PD rights in the same way that they've announced in England, in Scotland. You got to blame devolved government and Nicola Sturgeon and all of that sort of stuff. What else have we got? Are you planning to start posting? Give me comments. Wow. Okay. Someone's mentioned about the connection dropping. They missed a large chunk of this. We'll get this out as a replay. So everyone that's registered for this, you'll have a replay link that will be sent to you tomorrow. So you'll be able to get in on that as well. Conversion, first floor, loft level PD. Property ground floor. Okay. Lot of very nice feedback I'm getting from people. Thank you for that. Some people have made statements and sort of nice comments about the presentations. I'm just trying to scroll through and see where the questions are. Sorry, okay, I've got a question from Victoria. Can't make the 26th, 27th. I'm afraid I don't have a further date for this year. It is just, I actually don't run that many of these courses. Our business is actually doing this stuff. So this is the last date for this year. I mean, we are recording it and all of that, so it is available like that, and the 8-week support. But there's no other date this year, I'm afraid. The next one will be in March at some point. How do you get multiple PD right before you buy a commercial property? Can you put? Okay, this is an interesting one from Praveen. How do you get multiple PD rights before you buy a commercial property? Can you put in place a clause if you do not get the PD rights? Well, the answer is yes and no. With a lot of PD, if you've got my checklist, you know that you're going to get it. You know, if you tick those boxes, you can buy with absolute certainty. You can go to an auction, buy the thing, get with absolute certainty. There are some cases which depend, you know, and in those cases, secure it with an option or what we call a subject to offer. So with an option, it's not really about getting the deposit back. You're saying, I'm going to give you this much money, a small token amount, for the option to buy this property at this point in time or walk away. With a subject to offer, you're saying, I will buy this property subject to getting this permission in place. So those sort of things are very, very common. But with a lot of the PD we're talking about, you have certainty. If you know what you're doing, you have complete certainty. Sorry, how much? I've answered that one. That's about, as I said, about 50 grand. LLP or LTD co. One of my bonuses is a incorporation course that talks about LLP, corporate structures and stuff like that. There are all sorts of, generally you'll be doing this from a limited company, will be suitable for most people. But in that incorporation section, that bonus section, there's some stuff. Company structure, Mark Fender, that is covered, and a lot more is covered in that bonus course, because company structure is very important for, particularly if you're developing out a building and it's VAT registered, then you really want to develop it out in one company and then sell it to another company in your group afterwards, which is the most tax efficient way of doing it. Our serviced office, for example, we've implemented a PropCo OpCo structure. So we've got one property company that owns the asset and an operating company that operates the serviced office businesses, because an investment company and a trading company have two different tax treatments and two different, and it's more advantageous to have an operating trading company for IHT, inheritance tax and all sorts. So anything to do with commercial property will involve a company. Yes, we cover that. That's part of the 8 modules that we cover. Yep. Buying, someone who's asked this, M. Gafour, what is transfer of on a going concern? What that means is that some properties are registered for VAT. I haven't got much time left. We're going to lose the connection in a few minutes, so I'm going to just whistle stop through some of the questions that we got. When you buy a VAT registered property, if the property is 100 grand, then you have to pay VAT on the purchase price, and you have to charge VAT on the rents. But if it's 100 grand property, you might not have 120 grand to pay for the VAT, because you can't borrow the VAT. A lender will lend you the money on the purchase price, but they won't pay you for the VAT. But if it's tenanted or whatever, they're what they call trading as a going concern rules, which allow you to, if you go through the process right, it allows you to get a certificate from the VAT office to purchase the property net of VAT. and that is a fantastic cash flow benefit. And again, I take you through that. I've got all the templates of the forms you need to fill in. A lot of people, I find at auctions, a lot of people avoid properties where it says VAT registered because they just don't know how to do it. They get scared of it, so it attracts fewer buyers. So there's some great opportunities in. Mo is asking, can you convert light industrial buildings into residential? No, that PD is going in a few weeks' time. It was practically gone. So this is the important thing, right? With this PD, there are lots of people like me who love it. I love this PD. It's an enabler. It allows me to do stuff without those pesky guys in the council putting their beaks in and stopping me with a bunch of red tape. But there's a whole bunch of people that don't like it. With industrial to residential conversions, people got their bee in their bonnets, and the government stopped it because of media pressure. Now, what happens is, with industrial units to residential conversions, you could convert an industrial unit into as many flats as you like. Now, under the PD, you get the conversion, but if you want to change the external appearance of the building, you don't get that under permitted development. So if you think about a warehouse, it doesn't have any windows. So what was happening is people were getting a 10,000 square foot warehouse, converting it into 30 flats, and there weren't any windows. And then they'd put in a separate planning application into the council, a planning application to punch in windows in the outside of the warehouse. Now, what happened is, the Daily Mail and all the newspapers and all of that, they got hold of these stories, and there was this famous case in Watford that got all the media headlines. Shock, horror, greedy, awful developer converts warehouses into 9 flats with no windows. Well, yes, because the PD just allowed change of use. You have to put in a separate planning application for the windows. So, of course, the media wanted a story. They didn't look at the PD and the planning app. They looked at the PD on its own. Their change of use to 9 flats, no windows, shock, horror, and the government have pulled that PD. Now, there are already murmurings about the new PD that's coming in. So don't assume it's going to be here forever. That is the mistake people make. Some people in the comments are salivating over the loss of industrial and warehouse conversions to PD. If you did this in 2015, you would have had some fun. But the government have withdrawn it now, So don't assume this new stuff is going to be here forever. The old PD, Class O, Class G, Class M, disappears 31st of July next year. And the new stuff that's coming in September, don't assume it's going to be here forever. Make hay when the sun shines. First mover advantage, learn it. Find the sites in the recession. Make it happen. And then you will be the ones with the smirk on your face if in 2-3 years' time some of these PDs get pulled. That's the way to be. So don't assume this is going to be forever. I think that is just such an important point I want to kind of get across to you guys. Let me see whether I can get a few more questions in. Do you think that James Pollard, do you think the PD rights will be extended beyond 2021? What I'm talking about are the old PD rights, Class O, Class G, Class M, which were introduced in 2013. They will not be extended beyond 2021 because it's actually written down in the development order 757, I think it is. It's written down in there. I've seen it in black and white. Because I kind of go through all the geeky legislative documents that come out of Parliament that they issue. It's very dry. There are lots of nuances in there, and you have to have your wits about you to figure out what they actually mean. But the reason for this is this. Office to Resi applies to B1. B1's usage classes offices. Retail to Resi is A1 and A2. Now, the thing is, those usage classes won't exist from September the 1st. They are being replaced by a new usage class E. And I've done a video on this on YouTube, what that usage class E actually means. So what they've said is the new usage class, so A1, A2, A3, B1 and D1, pretty much all are now E-class, E-usage class as from September the 1st. What they haven't announced yet is a PD rule which allows repurposing of all the properties within E-class. So what they've just said for now is that the old PD rules, even though A1, A2, B1 won't exist anymore, the old rules will apply to those old usage classes until 31st of July next year. So it's the last of the summer wine for those opportunities. And Dr. Rash is asking 3 years to implement. No, it's not 3 years, it's 3 years to start the works. So, and it's to make a start. So what does that mean, make a start? Well, it typically means, and this has been tested in courts and stuff, is to get your first buildings inspection. So whenever you do works, it's covered by building regulations, and you will have buildings inspectors come to make a site visit at periodic times in the construction. So what I do is and I've done, I don't know whether people know, this is true for planning permission as well. If you get planning permission on a site, it normally has a condition that you have to start works within 3 years. But once you've started works, you've got as long as you like to finish. So we've got a site, for example, where we didn't implement it within the 3 years, a flat conversion project. What we did is we needed to knock down a load-bearing wall. So we put in one steel RSJ, and we knocked down that load-bearing wall. That's significant because when you knock down a load-bearing wall and put in a steel, you have to get it inspected by a building inspector. So the building inspector inspected it, they signed that steel beam off, and we had started works. Then we mothballed the whole thing because we just, for other reasons, we didn't want to do that site at that time. But because we'd started the project and we'd got that first buildings inspector notice approval, we now, if we do go back to that project in 20 years, they can't stop us. It's been tested in court. It is what it is. So I'll take you through all these tricks and tips on the workshop, and you'll get to know all of this sort of stuff, because the devil's in the detail, the devil's in the tricks and tips, and the ways of getting what you want from all the rules. Okay, so when you chop the shop to half and build a flat at the back, where does the flat entrance come from? That's from Say. Good question. Okay, typically I like shops, or I have bought shops where there is rear access. So there's rear access through a Mews Road. Some of the shops that we have done, there's a Mews Road at the back. So there's access, or there's a pathway at the back, or a service road of some kind, which allows you to get access from the rear. If that is my first port of call, get access from the rear. If I have to, we'll get access from the front. The trouble with building when you do access from the front, basically you have to put a doorway and a corridor taking you to the back of the shop. Now, your shop frontage needs to be really at least a minimum of 5 meters wide. If you get less than that, like I've seen some people have presented me deals and they're 3.5 meters wide. You know, if the shop front is 3.5 meters wide and you've got to put a doorway and a corridor to access the back, then the shop frontage is just too narrow. It doesn't work. So what I do with this is give you a checklist, because I know what works basically. So I'll give you the shopping list of requirements. You tick off all these points, and That's what you look for in the sites that you look for, and you only go ahead with the sites which will work. Kieran's deal is a classic. The reason why the flat at the back has got 400,000, she sold for just over £400,000, is because the access is from the rear, and the access is from a residential side street that the shop corners onto. So it's so when you actually approach the flat, because you access it from a residential side street, you don't even know that you're behind a shop. There is just no connection with the shop, so it doesn't feel as though you're attached to commercial at all. That gave it that great value. So that's a very good question. Okay, so plenty of questions, plenty of you coming on the course. Amina has booked, thank you, look forward to seeing you. Shakila has booked, Darren, Michael Chu as well. So as I mentioned, it's a peer group. You'll get to know all these guys. Jemima Adams, look forward to seeing you. Alka as well. Carly, you're on. Gurinder Kulha, Dylan Mitchell, quite a few of you. When we get onto the implementation after the weekend workshop, we get onto the implementation, and that 8-week implementation, because a lot of you will be starting from a very, very similar position. You'll be getting out there doing this stuff, and I tell you, when we start having the group calls after the workshop, it is the most inspiring thing. It's not actually what I say, because I just give you a whole bunch of information and point you in the right direction. The biggest source of inspiration is seeing people who are on that weekend course with you apply this stuff, and they're coming to the deal analysis workshops and they're saying, look, I've sort of seen this deal, or I'm putting an offer on this, or how do I do this, that, and the other. They're talking about executing it, and that is the biggest thing people find inspiring and motivating within the 8 weeks of post-weekend workshop support, because that's when you see people that have just had the same starting point actually implement this stuff, which is just so powerful. The way you learn is from looking at as many deals as possible, and this is a hothouse of learning, because if you did it on your own, there are only so many deals that you can explore and look at and evaluate on your own. When we do this in our group over that next 8-week period, you are doing this learning in a group, which means that you're getting visibility over far more deals. And we look at these deals